able to do it both ways. If you're interested in the US side, you can definitely come to us and we can discuss that more as well, but today I'm just more focusing on our Mexico program. And then the last thing, which I actually think is the most important, I started as a case manager, so I know what different intended parents are looking for. One of the biggest things that I think people need is someone to talk to, someone who's going through the process. You have a lot of questions, you're feeling a certain way, you want to talk to a community. So we do have a secret closed Facebook group where all of our clients can talk with one another. They're at various stages of their pregnancy or just starting out. So they may have answers to some questions that you have, and sometimes it's nice to hear from someone different than me, someone who's going through it. We had this happen and we want to talk more about this. So you guys can all get together, have conversations. If you want to speak with one of our couples, that's an option. And just sort of a little bit back with our success rates and things like that. We started up Surrogacy Beyond Borders. It's actually our year anniversary this month. And we have had 23 confirmed heartbeats in the past year. So they're at various stages of their pregnancy right now, or they've already exited Mexico successfully. So that's kind of our numbers a little bit there with our first year in business. Well, 23. So it could be you next year. There were people sitting exactly where you're sitting last year this time that were home for the holidays with their newborn. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
So in terms of, let's say you're starting today and signing up, how long is the typical process for matching and
Well, it depends on your donor. So if you have a donor who's ready and available to start now, especially if you go with the Mexico side of things, I mean, we could have you matched with the donor in Mexico, have embryos created, I mean, in 2 months, depending on how quickly you can move. So if you want to fly to Cancun, do your semen deposit, and then have a girl do the donation in Cancun, we could have that ready to go for a transfer in a couple of months. So typically the time, being very conservative, the average I would say is about a year. So from sign up to baby at home. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm just curious, if they're going to be born in Mexico, is that part of a dual citizenship, or because you're terminating her rights, is it the U.S.?
You can apply for dual citizenship. You can do everything in Mexico, but we typically advise our clients to do the U.S. citizenship first, or whatever citizenship you'll be going for. And as a side note, if you are not a U.S. citizen, we have ways of having the baby be a U.S. citizen if you choose a U.S. donor. So if that's an issue, come talk to me more about that later. But we advise, just because of time frames, you're looking at about 3 weeks in Mexico is the average that we're seeing for the exit process once the baby's born, to get the passport, things like that. You don't want to be sitting there waiting for longer to do the dual, so I would advise to do the U.S. first and then apply for the Mexican citizenship as soon as you're back at home. Yes?
Sorry, on that one, so they're born in Mexico and then it takes 3 weeks for you to exit the country?
Yes, on average. So that's the timeline that we're seeing. Basically the reason for that, and this may change, it may actually go down to more like a week and a half to 2 weeks. Surrogacy is only legal currently. The really defined laws that we have are in Tabasco. That's actually expanding, going back to the Mexican law and how they're expanding things instead of restricting. Mexico City is where the U.S. Embassy is, and they're actually in the process of making it legal to have a surrogacy birth there. So if that happens, you know, in time for you to sign up and for the baby to be born, that would cut that time a little bit. The reason that we have to wait the 3 weeks is your baby's born, they have to wait 10 days before they can get on a plane. So that's the lag time there. And then you go to Mexico City, apply for the passport and things like that, and then you're able to go home. Yes?
how often do people actually want the baby to be with the surrogate for longer so they have access to breast milk?
I'm sorry, say that.
How often would somebody actually want longer with the surrogate so they get access to breast milk?
We haven't had that happen yet, but it's an option. It would be something that you'd want to discuss with your case manager at the start. If that is important and you do want that to happen, then you can go ahead, we can set that up and have the surrogate. We have had a couple requests that the surrogate pumps so that you can have that bonding time, but it is still the breast milk. And the first couple of days is the most important part for that anyway, so that's all can be discussed with timeframes with the case manager.
A couple questions. One would be, what if you already have the ovary donor and an embryo? is that still possible to use
Oh,
your
yes.
program? Okay.
Absolutely.
And the second is, what's your selection process for your surrogates?
Okay, so we actually have a U.S. physician who reviews all of the surrogate applications, so that's the first step of everything. The reason for that, obviously it's not mandatory, but my business partner, when she started the program, really wanted it to emulate U.S. standards. So they're very strict. We're very strict about the candidates we have. Our girls come to us, they go through initial screening, the U.S. physician reviews everything, accepts them into the program, and then they go through the screening with Fertility Center of Cancun. They're very strict with the girls that they will accept because their success rates are at stake as well. So everyone is really making sure that we have the best surrogates. One of the reasons that we're actually able to secure such great surrogates is that in Mexico, people are underpaying surrogates. We're not going to do that. We are still able to offer very affordable options, but we pay our surrogates the most money, so we have access to the best surrogates. So we have all of the girls are coming and applying, and we only take the best. So, which is one of the reasons that we pay more, because then you can have quality surrogates that you're looking at. Yes?
2 questions. What is the frequency that the surrogates have had a successful pregnancy before, whether surrogacy or their own child? And also, is there the opportunity to travel to Cancun, and if you wanted to be there for the sonogram, and then if you want to do a site visit and essentially meet with the surrogate and just to have that relationship?
Wonderful questions. Thank you for asking. 100% of our surrogates have had a healthy, uncomplicated pregnancy. That is standard for us. We also, I don't know if some other panelists have been talking about different guidelines with how many babies they've had, things like that. There are a certain number of pregnancies that we will allow, so we have the same guidelines. We have stricter guidelines, actually, than even some U.S. agencies. So 100% of the time they've had a healthy, uncomplicated pregnancy. As far as visiting, we encourage it. I absolutely love it when a client wants to go visit Mexico. Me telling you, it can't even really describe how amazing everything is. The first time that I went as a case manager, I looked around at the clinics and met the doctors and nurses, and I just was so thrilled that this was the agency that I worked for and this was the clinic that we worked with. So we actually encourage couples to go down and visit. What can happen is a staff member actually even come get you from the airport, take you to every house that we have. You could even meet your surrogate before you're officially matched with her, things like that, so that you can kind of see everything that we do. And then you can go as much as you want. So if you want, we have a couple, I don't know if anyone can go this far, but we have a couple who kind of has some time and they don't have to work and do things. So they're actually going and they're going to live down in Cancun during the pregnancy. I know a lot of us can't really afford that luxury, but it's an option. So if you want to go and see every single ultrasound, we are open and willing to that.
Great, thank you.
Yes?
I have one question on just the surrogates. So, I mean, you're talking about, and I was reading some of your literature, so, for example, the surrogates and their children come and live in there. But are any of them married? Do they tend to be single?
They have to be single. They have to be single. Mexico is a little bit different with their laws. If a surrogate, from what I understand from the attorney, if a surrogate is married, then the husband would have rights to the baby regardless of DNA, which is completely insane. But something that Mexico does apparently. So we stay away from that completely. There may be loopholes, but we do not dabble with that at all. So they're all single.
Birth certificate, are the intended parents' names on the birth certificate right away, or?
Yeah, so what happens is the genetic link is on the birth certificate when you're in Mexico, and then you can go ahead with the step-parent adoption once you get back to the States.
I'm kind of curious for the surrogates, like do their families know, what's happening with them? Like I've heard stories like in India that a lot of the women there, they just go back and their families never know what's happened to them or the process they went through, so I'm curious what it's like in Mexico.
A lot of our girls actually do talk about it quite openly. They don't want to be very public on Facebook with things, but they do talk with their families about it. I mean, they're gone with their kids for a year, so I'm not even sure how they would hide that too much, but a lot of our girls actually talk to their family about it. We have several sets of sisters actually living in the house because they go in, thinking that it's going to be great and they want to do this, and then they go back to their sisters and say, hey, I'm with this program, you should come with me, it's amazing. And so we actually have several sets of sisters. So I imagine that they're all talking about it with their families.